In 2006, 20-year-old Ukrainian native Yana Kasyan arrived in the United States for the first time with ambitious plans. With a medical degree under her belt, she found a job as a translator in Los Angeles. Yana aspired to build a career, start a family, and raise children in this prosperous country. 9 years later, fate brought her together with wealthy 34-year-old Blake Leibel, an aspiring Hollywood producer who had inherited millions from his family. It seemed that Yana's dreams of an American life were beginning to come true. Blake came from a wealthy Canadian family that was involved in real estate in Toronto. But, as he himself admitted, not everything was rosy. His father showed more affection towards his older son Cody, who had his own business in real estate and recording. This provoked jealousy and anger in Blake. The sources of the Leibel family's wealth dated back to their grandfather's times. On his mother's side, Blake's grandfather created an empire in plastics manufacturing, while on his father's side, his grandfather was an influential real estate developer in Toronto. After his parents' divorce, Cody stayed with his father, while Blake lived with his mother. When their mother died in 2011, a legal battle erupted between the father and sons over her $12 million estate. This significantly damaged Blake's relationship with his father. Blake received less than half. 30-year-old Blake headed to Hollywood to try his hand at directing and producing. Many perceived him as a rich kid playing with his parents' money. Most partners didn't take him seriously, although some noted his hard work and enthusiasm in project implementation. Among Blake's works was a low-budget film, Foxes, about a college student who tried to raise money for a hair transplant through a website with female students, and work on the animated series, Spaceball, based on the Mel Brooks film. But his main project was the graphic novel, Syndrome, which he hoped to adapt into a TV show. Blake's ambitions and wealth attracted beautiful women. In 2006, he married model Amanda Brown. The couple lived in a luxurious mansion in Beverly Hills. Amanda adored parties and dragged Blake to them, although he valued home comfort more, reading comics. Shortly after the wedding, the couple had a son. In 2015, when Amanda was pregnant for the second time, Blake suddenly announced a divorce. He was captivated by a new love interest, Ukrainian Yana Kasyan. Blake assured Yana that everything was over with his wife. A passionate romance ensued, with trips, restaurants, and an expensive Mercedes as a gift. The lovers settled together in an apartment in West Hollywood. A few months later, Yana became pregnant. Blake insisted that he was about to get divorced and proposed to the girl. Yana was over the moon with happiness. Yana's mother Olga arrived from Ukraine to meet her future son-in-law and help her daughter with the baby. When daughter Diana was born, Yana and Blake were overflowing with joy. The fiancée showed extraordinary care, constantly kissing and affectionately calling Yana, "my love." But behind the idyllic picture lay Blake's main fear, losing everything. In messages to a friend, he shared his concerns about his older brother Cody's gambling debts to Russian mobsters. Blake feared for himself and his loved ones. Unlike his restrained younger brother, Cody's lifestyle was characterized by publicity, fast cars, and high-stakes gambling with wealthy individuals and members of the Russian criminal underworld. Rumors about his brother losing over $1 million and needing to pay back the debt made Blake tremble with fear of a deadly threat. At that time, the man was still officially married to Amanda but was already living with Yana and their daughter. He was also secretly dating another woman, Constance. In May 2016, she accused Blake of rape at a birthday party at her home. Leibel was arrested, and he had to confess this to Yana. After Blake was released, the perfect picture of his relationship with Yana shattered. But the girl didn't want to lose him. She asked her mother to move out and take little Diana to an apartment Blake had rented 3 kilometers away. Yana abandoned her daughter and focused on the romance. By the way, by that time, Blake had already lost interest in his daughter. He began demanding intimacy from Yana, threatening to go to another woman. The girl was still recovering from a C-section and refused. The man intensified his control and pressure. Olga begged her daughter to leave Blake and move in with them and her granddaughter. On May 23, 2016, Yana went shopping with her mother. At some point, she started receiving messages from Blake. She abruptly changed her expression and said she urgently needed to go to him. No one saw Yana again. The next day, her mother couldn't reach her by phone. Olga became worried. "I had a feeling that something was wrong," she recalled. The woman called her daughter 6 times, but she didn't answer. Olga went to Yana and Blake's apartment, but Diana was sleeping, so there was no one to leave her with. Then the woman called the police. Due to her lack of English, it took a long time to connect her with a Russian-speaking operator. Olga reported her missing daughter. The call was accepted, but the police took no action. The next morning, Olga and her friend took a taxi and arrived at the building where Yana and Blake lived. Approaching the residential complex closed to outsiders, they walked around the building to look at the apartment windows. There they saw Blake standing by the glass. Taking advantage of the opportunity when one of the residents was leaving through the gate, the women slipped inside. Climbing to the 3rd floor, they knocked and rang the doorbell, but no one answered. Dialing 911 again, Olga and her friend pleaded for help into the receiver. The police arrived promptly but were reluctant to break down the door due to the lack of signs of danger, such as screams from inside the apartment. Blake didn't answer the law enforcement officers' calls. Eventually, they left him a voice message. "Mr. Leibel, this is the West Hollywood Sheriff's Department. We are waiting outside your apartment and urgently need to speak with you." Receiving no response, the police stood outside the door for several hours and left. Confused, Olga didn't want to leave the building, but it was necessary to return to little Diana, who was left in the care of a friend 3 kilometers away. On Thursday morning, Olga appeared at the apartment again and continued to beg the police for help over the phone, shouting into the receiver, "I demand that the police come and free my daughter." This time, the law enforcement officers agreed on the need to enter the apartment. They were concerned about the fact that Yana could have health problems after her recent delivery. After asking Olga to wait outside, the police officers went downstairs and sat on the sidewalk. Having received the keys from the building manager, they discovered that Blake had installed additional locks. In the end, they had to break down the door. Calling out for Blake and receiving no response, the police officers saw a mess in the apartment. The doors to both bedrooms were locked and barricaded. Taking them off their hinges, they entered the guest room and noticed traces of blood. Again, unsuccessfully calling out for the owner, they headed to the master bedroom, but the entrance was blocked by mattresses. As the law enforcement officers began to open the door, one of the mattresses started falling directly on them. A scream came from the bedroom. Blake shouted that he wouldn't come out and that Yana wasn't home. Then he called a friend who convinced him to come out. After a while, Blake opened the door and came out wearing only his underwear. By that time, detectives had arrived on the scene. Entering the apartment, they discovered blood on the headboard of the bed in the guest bedroom and a large stain on the wall that someone had tried to wipe off. And then they found Yana, dead, covered with a blanket up to her chin. A plush Mickey Mouse was thrown on top of her. The injuries inflicted on Yana turned out to be extremely brutal. Her scalp was ripped off, causing the woman to take on a horrifyingly pale appearance. Only a true sadist was capable of such an act. Blake was found to have scratches and bruises on his face, as well as a bite mark on his arm. It became clear that Yana had resisted. Searching Blake's pants, the police found his passport and a considerable amount of cash in his pocket. The detective suggested that he planned to get rid of Yana's body, clean up the apartment, and flee to his native Canada. When handcuffs were put on Blake, Olga entered the building. Seeing him being led out, she burst into tears and screamed, "Where is my daughter?" She was told that Yana was gone, but they didn't let her into the apartment. Just look at the photo of Blake's arrest. Despite the scratches and bruises, he was oddly smiling at the camera. During the interrogation, Blake denied his involvement in his fiancée's murder. He didn't provide any plausible explanation for what happened. The only thing he muttered through clenched teeth was, "Science will tell you who did it." And the scientists did get to work. After carefully examining the scene, experts concluded that the perpetrator had meticulously concealed traces of blood. Using special reagents and lighting, they discovered both blood stains and traces of cleaning agents. Blood was visible to the naked eye only on the bed in the living room. However, after treatment with special tools, it became clear that almost the entire floor was covered in evidence. The bathroom was also checked. A detailed inspection allowed the detectives to conclude that the violence had occurred in different parts of the apartment. Yana suffered for a long and painful time, about 8 hours. The woman's body was virtually drained of blood, which explained her excessive pallor. Blake had made considerable efforts to remove all traces using household chemicals. However, neither the cleaning agents themselves nor Yana's bedding or clothing were found in the apartment. While searching the garbage cans, the police were lucky to find a sheet with a handprint missing a pinky finger. It was later established that Blake was missing part of his right pinky. All the evidence pointed to the fact that it was he who had brutally murdered Yana. There were no other suspects. The crime had nothing to do with either the Russian mafia or Blake's jealous mistresses. Traces of illegal substances were found in his blood, but the motive for the attack on Yana remained unclear. During the interrogation, Blake admitted that he had never been popular with women. He hinted that it was money that attracted numerous lovers to him. The detectives assumed that Yana had refused him intimacy, which Blake could not tolerate. Trying to reconstruct the suspect's life path, investigators questioned his relatives, classmates, teachers, wife, mistress, and friends, everyone who had known him since childhood. But none of them dared to openly talk about Blake publicly. They all could not believe that he was capable of such a horrific crime. The forensic psychology expert concluded that Blake was completely sane. In his opinion, Leibel's upbringing in a wealthy family and his strained relationship with his father instilled in him an acute need to control and dominate women. The psychologist believed that Blake was used to getting what he wanted at any cost. Moreover, horrific fantasies were raging in his head, which he carefully concealed. When Yana drove him to a frenzy, these hidden urges burst out. After familiarizing themselves with Blake's graphic novel, Syndrome, the police were shocked. The cover featured a doll without a scalp, and even more gruesome details were hidden inside. Blake had literally brought his brutal creation to life. In February 2018, the Kasyan family won a civil lawsuit against Blake Leibel. The court ordered him to pay Olga and Yana compensation in the amount of $42 million. And in June 2018, 2 years after the tragic events, Blake appeared before a criminal court. Surveillance camera footage showed that on the day of the murder, Leibel ordered food delivery to his home twice. The courier did not notice anything suspicious, although Yana was already suffering from violence at that time. The abuse itself lasted about 7 to 8 hours. Blake had plenty of opportunities to come to his senses and stop, but this did not happen. His brother Cody was present at every court hearing but refused to give comments to journalists. Leibel's lawyer insisted that the graphic novel, Syndrome, was actually created by hired authors, not Blake himself. They claimed that it was they who brought the horror from the book to life. But in the end, the court found Blake Leibel guilty of the brutal murder of his common-law wife Yana Kasyan. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Olga Kasyan still blames herself for not breaking down the door on the day the police first arrived. Perhaps then Yana could have still been saved. At the time of the sentencing, Yana and Blake's daughter was 2 years old. The Leibel family has not paid a single cent for Diana's support to this day. Yana dreamed more than anything that her daughter would grow up in America, but due to lack of funds, the girl now lives in Ukraine, in the city where her mother was buried. For some reason, I constantly want to talk about her, Olga admits. It eases my pain. I feel her presence every day, every moment. This story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Be sure to like and subscribe to support our channel. Thanks for watching and bye everyone.